The author said, sins of the heart. After the author, may Allah be merciful to him, completed his discourse about the obligations of the heart, he started talking about the sins of the heart. He began with the sins of the heart before talking about other sins, because the heart is the master of all body parts, as came in a hadith. He said, Section 29, clarifying the sins of the heart. Among the sins of the heart are insincerity, seeking recognition and being noticed by performing virtuous deeds. Seeking recognition and being noticed, yani seeking to be noticed by performing virtuous deeds. Yes. Such as zakat, fasting, and reciting the book of God. That is, to perform virtuous acts. That means rewardable acts. So that means worships. Seeking people's approval to praise him. So I like all these words here. This is nice, mashallah. This is sickness of the heart. You want people's approval. Stronger in some people than others. And that's why you could have insincerity in your heart and not know. So you might think you're sincere and you're not sincere. That is, to perform virtuous acts seeking people's approval to praise him. It nullifies the reward of the deed with which insincerity simultaneously occurred. And it is a major sin, this feeling, if you want to call it. Perhaps that's a feeling or an emotion, this insincerity, riya, wanting to be seen, wanting to be noticed. It nullifies the reward of the deed with which insincerity simultaneously occurred. That's clear. And it is a major sin. May Allah protect us from it. Amin. Yani, the scholars said, creeps into the heart. MashaAllah. They said, vainglory. That's an interesting word. I didn't learn this word until I was a teenager. To pride oneself for one's obedience to Allah. It is to look upon one's worship and good deeds as being the result of one's own merit, while failing to notice that it is God-given. Yani, vainglory, or here, pride, and another word is conceit. Conceit. It is a self-centeredness. Self-centeredness. You see yourself. Yani, you like to see yourself. You like what you see from yourself. And here, it is to look upon one's worship and good deeds as being the result of one's own merit, while failing to notice that it is God-given. But there's something you could notice about these sins. The definition given here about insincerity is linked to the worships, zakat and fasting, to perform virtuous acts. The performance of worships is mentioned in the definition here. Same thing about this vainglory. But that doesn't mean that that's with the worship, the act of worship is the essence of the feeling that's in the heart. That the person is going to be committing a sin when he does this with his worships. But there's a fundamental feeling there in the heart, which is this insincerity and this self-centeredness. Just like, what did we learn about envy? It's possible that the person has the feeling in his heart. He's not even sinful yet. He won't be sinful until he implements it, until he works according to his feeling. So it says, vainglory, to pride oneself for one's obedience to Allah. Yeah. Or like, more simple term, for him to think that he's like that. Concerning something, though. He thinks he's like that. It is to look upon one's worship and good deeds as being the result of one's own merit, while failing to notice that it is God-given. Yani, it is a talent from Allah. The talent is a gift from God. Yani, thinks his talent is due to his own merit or to his own self. Doesn't remember that if he has a talent, it's from Allah Ta'ala. Each person has his own talent. Subhanallah. Like, even if that were praying a lot and fasting a lot, he's talented at that. Allah makes it easy for him, and he's good at it. May Allah enable us to be talented in that. Amin. I.e., neglecting to remember Allah's grace upon one, reckoning one's obedience to be a result of one's virtue. It's interesting if you see some people like that. Yani, same thing. Not about worship, but they're going to direct it towards something else. So they're going to say, look how rich I am. Look how much stuff I have. Look at all that I've achieved. That's because I'm like that. That's why I did the work and I persisted and I. Now, if you have this feeling while you're doing the worship, you have no reward. If you are self-centered while actually engaged in the worship, you have no reward. But if you felt that way afterwards, which means you reflected on what you did and you found it impressive, and then you thought that you were like that, so you let that feeling take you there, then you don't lose the reward, but still haram. Having doubt in the existence, omnipotence, omniscience, or oneness of Allah, or having doubt in any of the remaining 13 attributes mentioned previously in the explanation of the first testification of faith. Such a doubt is kufr. So I think that's clear. If you have any question about that, you can ask me. I'm going to keep going. Feeling safe from Allah's punishment, i.e., to be reliant upon the mercy of Allah while indulging in sin. Subhanallah. Feeling safe from Allah's punishment, that means relying on Allah not punishing one, hoping, depending on Allah not punishing one, and insisting on sinning with this hope. So that's haram. That's a major sin. So to keep sinning while relying on Allah's mercy, that's what it means, feeling safe from Allah's punishment. Despairing of Allah's mercy, i.e., for the slave to have the conviction that Allah will definitely not forgive him and will inevitably torture him for his numerous sins. That means despairing of Allah's mercy is when the slave believes about himself that he is doomed in the afterlife. It's not permissible to feel doomed about the afterlife. It's obligatory also to have hope. So these two sins are partners. And the escape from those two sins is like spreading two wings and flying. Because you cannot fly straight without, you can't fly straight with a crooked wing or broken wing. Those two wings are hope and fear. Hope and fear. You hope for Allah's mercy and you fear His punishment. Your obligation is for these to be even until you're on your deathbed. When you're on your deathbed, it becomes permissible for you to hope more than you fear. Being arrogant towards Allah's slaves, i.e., one's Muslim brothers and sisters. Yes. Arrogance is of two types. The first is to reject the truth said by someone because he is young, for instance, while knowing that he is correct. Or to look down upon people because one has more money than them, or has a higher social status than theirs, or the like. The latter is the second type of arrogance. So also very important sin to be aware of. Yani, high alert from arrogance. Arrogance is a monster sin. Insincerity also is a monster sin. Yani, I mean, has very bad results. Has a very bad result. And the arrogance has very bad result. It says, being arrogant towards Allah's slaves, one's Muslim brothers and sisters, that's a good addition there. As for the kafir, then we are polite, insha'Allah ta'ala. Arrogance is of two types. The first is from the heart, which is why this is here in this chapter, the sin of the heart. To reject the truth said by someone. Because this other one is a youngster or younger, for instance, less experienced, or a woman, or poor, or for some reason that you find in your rotten self, to reject the truth from this person while knowing that he is correct, or to look down upon people. This second aspect of arrogance is a sin of the eye, because this looking down upon them here, it refers to a literal glance that one performs. So look how a person could be sinful for a glance, and think how easily you could make a glance without thinking about it. MashaAllah. So that's how you think about the fact that you could commit a sin without knowing. Or to look down upon people, the Muslim people, because one has more money than them, or the like of that. So that's clear. It is feared for the person who has arrogance in his heart to die as a kafir. So beware of that one. Harboring enmity in the heart towards a Muslim if one acts accordingly and does not hate it. So that's where the sin comes in. If one acts accordingly and does not hate it, that means he indulged in this feeling, his harboring of enmity in the heart towards that Muslim. He hates that Muslim's guts and he wants to do something to him. Maybe even just harass him, i.e., to be determined to harm a Muslim, to say harmful words to him, or to physically harm him unjustly. Meaning, because you're motivated by this feeling here. But as long as you have that feeling and you don't act on it, and you hate it too, that means you get a grip on yourself, then there's no sin. Being envious, i.e., feeling bitter about a grace granted to a particular Muslim. I like the way that's worded. Very nice. Feeling bitter about a grace granted to a particular Muslim. Finding it agonizing and acting accordingly. Yeah, yani, someone has something nice and it bothers you. Now, same thing. If it doesn't go further than that, just you're bothered because he has something nice, then you don't have a sin here. But look at you, you're a hater. So you need to check yourself. By having the firm intention to divest the envied person from his endowment, yani to get him off of there, get him away from that endowment, to ruin it for him. Or by actually doing so, either verbally or physically. Yani, by having the firm intention, means he says, because he hates the fact that that person has something nice, if I ever could ruin it for him, I would. So right there, that's haram. Or actually doing so either verbally or physically. So we're talking about nasty people here. That's how some people are. You wonder, how can someone be so mean? How can someone be so bitter? How can someone be so nasty? May Allah protect us. Amen. Reminding a person of given donations, which means to enumerate the acts of charity one did for another. Let me remind you real quick too. Here in the book of obligatory knowledge, talking about envy, is where you could talk about the evil eye. That's where the Shaykh digresses in his Bughya to talk about the evil eye here. Wa alaykum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Reminding a person of given donations, yani handouts, which means to enumerate the acts of charity one did for another, to hurt his feelings. With that intention, you're throwing what you did for him in his face to embarrass him. SubhanAllah. There's a saying, some people say, mean people suck. Or to mention that charity to another person whom the recipient of the charity would not like to be informed, thus hurting the recipient's feelings. This behavior nullifies the reward of the donations, the charities. Like saying to the recipient of the charity, so I like how they're using donation and charity interchangeably here. Donation and charity. Good job there. And but there was another word in there too. So I like it, mashallah. Like saying to the recipient of the charity, did I not give you such and such dollars on such and such a day when you were in need? But here you don't need comma because you have the question mark. And so that's enough here. In this case, you're not going to use the question mark and the comma. Just keep the question mark and lose the comma. With the purpose of breaking the recipient's heart, or to do so by similar harmful statements. To persist on sinning, i.e., for one's sins to be more than his good deeds in number. The habitual sinner, yes, that's a nice statement there. The habitual sinner falls into an extra enormous sin when the number of his past sins exceeds the number of his past good deeds. Nice. So I think that's clear. Yani, you're going to track your deeds throughout the day and night. You're going to know if your good deeds are more than your bad deeds, or your bad deeds are more than your good deeds. And on any particular day, you're going to say, this day, this is not a good day for me. I need to chill. In terms of the number of sins. To improperly think that Allah will withhold what one hopes from His mercy in the hereafter. That's interesting translation. To improperly think that Allah will withhold what one hopes from His mercy in the hereafter. That's nice. That helps. Okay. This is similar to despairing of Allah's mercy that was mentioned previously. May Allah have mercy on who worked on this book. Amin. And may Allah give the one whoever worked on this book a grand reward. Amin. All right. So what is despairing of Allah's mercy? That's when the slave believes that he's doomed. Allah will surely punish him. So that's a major sin. He lacks hope for mercy. That's a major sin. So the Shaykh mentioned another sin. Su'u dhanni billah. And the way it's translated here is to improperly think that Allah will withhold what one hopes from His mercy. Yani, maybe this is of, or hopes for, of His mercy. To improperly think that Allah will withhold what one hopes for of His mercy in the hereafter. So it has the same meaning as despairing of Allah's mercy, being hopeless that Allah will definitely punish you. But it has another name, and the meaning of this name is that a person thinks ill of God. Despairing of Allah's mercy, being hopeless of Allah's mercy, and feeling doomed is having an ill thought about God. So it's not permissible. Thinking ill of Allah's slaves without relying on a valid indication, such as accusing someone of stealing one's money without having any valid indication of such. Yani, so that means being suspicious, or not being suspicious, having suspicion, suspecting Muslims, thinking ill of God, yes, feeling hopeless of God's mercy, and believing that one is doomed in the afterlife. That itself is thinking ill of God. It's clear? Inshallah. Please. And thinking ill of Allah's slaves without relying on a valid indication. Okay, go ahead. What is the opposite? I never learned there's opposite here. thinking well of, thinking good of God. I haven't heard of this. Yani, I didn't learn that there's a case. Here's a statement that we will elaborate on here. So what would that mean? Yani, you mean thinking good of God? So I haven't learned there's a case that has this name, that has this title here. Haven't learned of a case that has this title here. Think well of God. I never heard anybody say think well of God. So all that I know and all that I'm saying is, first, there are two sins. One sin is to habitually sin, relying on God's mercy. The other sin is to believe that you are doomed in the afterlife to be tortured. These two sins are opposites. Now, the one where one believes he's doomed in the afterlife and that God will punish him for sure, this one has another name, which is called su'u dhanni billah, thinking ill of God. I mean, barakallahu fikum. You said, is it sufficient to be able to deduce from a person's previous actions that they are such and such kind? What would valid indication be? Okay. It says here, such as accusing someone of stealing one's money without having any valid indication. So valid indication would be like if the money were in the room and the other person were in the room, those two people were in the room, the money was in the room. Then one guy left the room and then he came back and the money was gone and the other guy was gone. So then he said, hey, I think that guy stole my money. I suspect he stole my money. So that's not haram here. Is it sufficient to be able to deduce from a person's previous actions that they are such and such kind? That's an interesting question. It is possible to call someone, to describe someone, that is, to describe someone by his behavior. Sometimes, not all the times. And sometimes it's not permissible to describe a person by his past behaviors. Sometimes not permissible. So now I'm just thinking about the answer to your question. So opens slight door here for details. So I'm not going to go into it. So, all right. You're welcome. Amin wa fikum. Okay. Denying predestination. Denying that all things are predestined by Allah is among the sins of the heart that are judged as kufr, blasphemy. For example, to believe that a single event or number of events occurred without the destining of Allah. I think also that's clear. Only thing I want to mention for you here is to remind you about the case of Al-Qadr Al-Mu'allaq, pending destiny, or one might say conditional destiny, which is to say, Allah knows that if you were to do this, then such and such will happen. But if you were to do that, then it won't happen. That right there, that amount, just that amount up to there, that's al-qadar al-mu'allaq. And Allah knows what you will for sure do. That's called al-qadar al-mubram, inevitable destiny. Inevitable destiny does not change. So denying destiny is blasphemy. Believing that destiny changes is denying destiny. So you have to be careful with so many people out there who don't know about pending destiny, because what came in the hadiths about this case don't mention the word mu'allaq, pending. Just mentions qadar, destiny. And it would be talking about qadar mu'allaq, the pending destiny. If you hear someone talking about this, sounds like they're about to deny destiny, cut him off before he says the wrong thing. And Say, huh? Yeah, there is something called pending destiny. Hold on a second. Sorry to interrupt you there. Yeah. Pardon me for interrupting you there. There's something called pending destiny, and there's something called inevitable destiny. Inevitable destiny does not change. If someone believes that changes, that's blasphemy. Yeah, and like we said, um, time travel is denial of destiny. That's blasphemy. And multiverses, that's denial of destiny. That's blasphemy. Being happy about a sin committed by oneself or others, even if one did not witness that sin. Yes, he said both don't change. Mm. But one's pending, though. One's pending, the other one's not pending. Yani, well, Allah would reveal to the angels that this is going to happen or that's going to happen. The angels don't know. So they take their records and they go and witness to see which one happens. And then when the one that doesn't happen, yani, doesn't happen, or when the one that happens, they cross off the one that doesn't happen. And they take the records back up to the guarded tablet. Barakallahu feek. He said, but in the end, it doesn't change. We talk about inevitable. Destiny doesn't change. Pending destiny is pending. Allah knows all the possibilities for the pending destiny. And He knows the inevitable outcome of the inevitable destiny. So that's it. Yani, I have nothing more there. Yani, it sounds like you're asking me about saying the pending destiny doesn't change too. So then don't overlook the meaning of pending, though. That's what I suspect is the issue here. Pending means not final. Mu'allaq, yani, it's my translation if you want to take the word pending. Mu'allaq, or depending, the depending destiny. Depends on what you do, this way or that way. Barakallahu feek. Barakallahu feek. Alhamdulillah. Tayyib. Being happy about a sin committed by oneself or others, even if one did not witness that sin. So being happy about the sin, that's a sin. Betraying someone, even a non-Muslim, such as promising him safety by telling him, "You are safe, I will not harm you," comma, inside the quotation marks. And then killing him when one has the opportunity. So that's clear. So you can't betray. You, Muslim, you have to keep your promise. You need to do what you say you're going to do. Don't say you're going to do something and then you don't do it. Because you're a Muslim. The Prophet ﷺ said, Al-Muslimuna inda shurutihim, the Muslims adhere to their conditions. Yani, keep your promise. And I remind myself and you, keep your promises to your family. And keep your promises to your children. Inflicting harm through deceit. Yes, setting a trap for a person. Luring the person into uh, doom. Setting the person up. That's the sin of Mecca. That's a major sin. Hating the Prophet's companions. The same applies to cursing them. Cursing here means insulting. I prefer the word insulting over cursing. I think, Yani, you're not listening to me here, which, Yani, insult. Hating the Prophet's companions, the same applies to insulting them. Hating the Muslim relatives or wives of the Prophet. Or hating the righteous Muslims. The righteous Muslims are the pious and God-fearing believers who perform the obligations and refrain from committing sins. Okay. So, hating the companions, that's a major sin. Hating the family of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, that's a major sin. Hating all the companions, that's blasphemy. Insulting all the companions, that's blasphemy. Hating the relatives of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, hating the wives of the Prophet, that's major sin. Hating the righteous Muslims, subhanallah wa bihamd. You gotta be a bad person. There's no way this is his case and he's a good person. These feelings are in his heart. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. So Muslim relatives by the author says miserliness, which means stinginess with regard to what Allah made obligatory, such as not paying the obligatory zakat. Should Muslim relatives be replaced by Prophet's relatives? But I have of the Prophet right here. The Muslim relatives of the Prophet. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. No problem. So miserliness is the stinginess, like not paying the zakat. And what's meant here is that he doesn't pay all of what he's obligated to pay. So that's another thing you might have in your heart. You don't know that it's there until when you don't want to pay everything you need to pay. And you could. Say, oh man, I'm so generous. I'll give out all the money. It says here parsimony, shuh, is synonymous with miserliness, bukhl, except that shuh in its technical sense, signifies severe stinginess, such as one neither paying zakat nor supporting his wife. So it's it's a bigger animal, has another name. It's like same shape, but it's much bigger, so it has a new name. And greedy avarice. Yani, covetousness. That word parsimony, I don't know it, by the way. So I'm assuming that it's being used properly. Which is having a strong desire to be rich, thus gathering money with disregard to whether or not it is coming from lawful or unlawful sources, with the purpose of showing off and looking down on others, and only intending to spend the money on lawful things that one's desires dictate. May Allah protect us from that. So this is definitely a run-on sentence. This whole thing is one sentence here. So it looks like it needs to be broken up. So this sin is the sin of just wanting to accumulate money in any way, doesn't matter. To display carelessness and to neglect the required respect for what Allah glorified. Yani Allah glorified this religion and its signs, like the mosque and the congregational prayer and the woman's head covering and the adhan and the minaret and the mushaf, to display carelessness and to neglect the required respect for what Allah glorified. This is not always blasphemy. Sometimes just haram doesn't reach the level of blasphemy. And that includes touching a mushaf without wudu. It's not blasphemy, although it is a lack of respect. Belittling and trivializing what Allah magnified, made great, be it obedience or sin that was belittling and trivializing what Allah magnified, be it obedience or sin that was emphatically judged by the religious statutes as grave and serious. I suggest here, take this here, that was emphatically judged by the religious statutes as grave and serious. Put it here. Belittling and trivializing what Allah magnified, semicolon, for example, what was emphatically judged by the religious statutes as grave and serious, be it obedience or sin. That helps the sentence flow better. Yes. For instance, saying, what good is prayer doing? What good is prayer going to do for you? Or will prayer provide food and clothes for you? Or as some people say, referring to some sins, I'll do it, it's harmless. It is also prohibited to legalize a sin, as mentioned previously. Belittling the Quran, like Al-Hallaj, who, when asked about something he was writing, said, this is something to rival the book of God. That's good translation. I.e., I'm authoring something similar to it. Belittling Islamic knowledge, like Sayyid Qutb, who said, Seeking the knowledge of religious rules is a waste of time and reward. Belittling paradise, such as the saying of some people, paradise is a child's game, period, inside. Or belittling the torment in hellfire, such as saying hellfire is a hospital and not a place of torture. Wallahu a'lam. We'll stop there. Any question? We'll have videos on Quranists. Few. Have videos on hadith terminology that have refutation for so-called Quranists. So do you have more specific question as far as the judgment is concerned for like saying, well, yeah, okay. Just wanted to make sure. If someone says, what good is prayer going to do for you? That's blasphemy. If someone says, will prayer provide food and clothes for you? I don't know if that's explicit blasphemy. Or as some people say, referring to some sins, I'll do it, it's harmless. It's blasphemy to say it's harmless. It is also prohibited to legalize a sin, legitimize a sin. Yes. If that sin is known in the religion by necessity to be a sin, then that's blasphemy. He said, I was speaking to a Wahhabi and he said that Allah's speech and the Sunnah are equal. Isn't Allah's speech superior to the Sunnah? Allah's speech is superior to the Sunnah. But he means probably as far as being a proof is concerned. There's a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ said, indeed, what the Messenger of Allah forbade is like what Allah forbade. But the Messenger of Allah forbade is like what Allah forbade. That means the hadith is valid proof like the Quran is valid proof. Subhanallah. Amin wa iyyakum. Tayyib. If you don't have any more questions.
Shaykh,
Yes. Yes.
have you done a series on the explanation of Umdatul Raghib?
No, I haven't done Umdatul Raghib yet.
Okay. Barakallahu feek.
Amin wa fikum. He said, is it kufr to believe in a queer Muslim? Or what does believe in mean here? Yani, is it kufr to believe that a Muslim might be a homosexual? That's not kufr. To identify as a homosexual, meaning to accept it as one's identity. That's his business. What is he doing there? He's a homosexual. He's telling you, I'm homosexual. So you're not going to say he's a kafir. You're going to tell him, don't do that, bro. Those people are attention seekers too. He said, but if he says it's fine to be homosexual, then this is kufr? Absolutely. That's blasphemy. Those people are attention seekers too. No, I don't think you want to label people kuffar. MashaAllah. Barakallahu feek. He said, if a brother has a bunch, can he just wipe part of the head for wudu? A burn. Well, he only has to wipe part of the head anyway. Yeah. طيب. Barakallahu feekum. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك